Hello, good evening. Welcome. This is Hot Edition. We're live on News Hub here at Desawe Kanda. Also live on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and beyond. We're also live on W93.5 in Wa and beyond. You can also listen to us all across the world on 3news.com. Coming up this evening, government revises growth projection for the year to 1.5% downward from 2.8%, indicating a slowdown in the economy. But Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta maintains the economy has turned the corner. We'll have updates and some reactions to the media budget review presented by the Finance Minister earlier today.
Mr. Speaker, overall GDP growth is, however, projected to rebound to 2.8%, 4.7%, and 4.9% in 2024, 25, and 26, respectively.
We have reactions and updates as well coming up from Parliament shortly here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. We understand Parliament is having an extended sitting, and members of Parliament have already been reacting to the details presented by the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta earlier today. Also, Colleges of Education Teachers Association of Ghana, CTAG, begins a nationwide strike effective tomorrow, August 1, 2023, over conditions of service. We have latest in business, sports, and entertainment coming up over the next 60 minutes. Stay with us. Let's get into the details now here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. You can share your thoughts with us as always. We're very, very interactive on our 3FM 927 on Facebook. Government has revised the economic growth forecast to 1.5%, down from 2.8%, reflecting fiscal consolidation measures and difficult global conditions. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, however, told Parliament growth was expected to pick up to 2.8%, 4.8%, and 4.9% in 2024, 2025, and 2026, respectively. The Finance Ministry also now sees headline inflation of 3.1%, that's 31.3% at the end of the year, compared with a projection of 18.9%. given when the 2023 budget was first presented in November 2022. So, despite downgrading its 2023 economic forecast from what we've seen so far, and coming to terms with the realities as we're faced with at the moment, and as I earlier indicated, even though the 2023 budget presented in 2022, the Finance Minister projected the economy to grow by 2.8%. They've had to rather reduce the projected growth rate from 2.8 to 1.5%. That indicates a contraction in the growth of the economy, and that has a number of implications, which we're going to be getting into shortly here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Now, regardless of this 2023 forecast, the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta said the new parameters were fully aligned with the IMF program and the fiscal objectives. Take a listen to the Finance Minister earlier today.
Mr. Speaker, key revisions to the macro fiscal target for 2023 year include: 1. Overall rate of 1.5% down from 2.8%. Non-oil revenue GDP growth rate of 1.5% down from 3%. End period headline inflation of 31.3% from 18.9%. Primary balance on commitment basis of a deficit of 0.5% of GDP compared to a surplus of 0.7% of GDP, aligning with IMF-supported primary balances. Gross international reserves sufficient to cover at least 0.8 months of imports of goods and service by 2023. Mr. Speaker, revisions to GDP projections. The overall real GDP growth for 2023 has been revised to 1.5% from 2.8%. And non-oil real GDP growth has also been revised to 1.5% from 3%. The downward revision in projected growth for 2023 is an indication of a broad slowdown in the three sectors of the economy as a result of factors such as the fiscal consolidation plan and difficult global conditions. Mr. Speaker, overall GDP growth is, however, projected to rebound to 2.8%, 4.7%, and 4.9% in 2024, 25, and 26, respectively.
Well, so that's the Finance Minister, Kenneth Freiata there. The Minister said government will not ask Parliament for additional money to supplement the 2023 budget. According to him, this was necessitated by the progress made in non-oil tax revenue collection within the year. However, there will be a review of the oil-related revenue, promising Ghanaians of the government's commitment to pursuing a robust growth strategy within the country's limited fiscal space. Here's the Finance Minister.
We continue making progress to exceed our non-oil revenue targets for the year. We have seen improvements in non-oil tax revenue collection despite some notable shortfalls in VAT. However, oil revenues are falling short of expectations due to changes in global prices. We will therefore undertake a downward review of the oil-related revenue as well as the corresponding expenditures to align with the underperformance of some of our revenue handles. Specifically, this will impact the annual budget funding amount. Mr. Speaker, in view of the reasons outlined above, as well as the lower domestic interest payment and amortization following the completion of a part of the DDEP and a reduction in the foreign finance capex, the appropriation has been revised from Ghana cedis 227.7 billion as presented and approved in November 2022 to 206.0 billion Ghana cedis. This is in line with Regulation 24, Sub-Regulation 3 of Public Financial Management Act Regulation 2019, LI 2378. Mr. Speaker, we will therefore not require a supplementary budget. Mr. Speaker, government is, however, committed to pursuing a robust growth strategy within the limited fiscal space and our fiscal consolidation program. This will be done by attracting domestic and foreign private sector investment and expanding production, which will be encouraged and stimulated by government policies and agencies.
Well, so that's the Finance Minister, Kenneth Freiata. This is just to give you an idea of some of the major highlights in the media budget review today. And stay with me because we're going to be going into many other aspects of what the Finance Minister said. But one of the major takeaways is the review of the projected GDP growth rate from 2.8% that's to 1.5%. And then we're seeing even the oil GDP also seeing some reduction as well. Let's go on to the telephone now and try and make some sense of some of the things that the Finance Minister put out earlier today. And Dr. Edu Osusa-Kodia is an economist, is a lecturer at the Economics Department, University of Ghana, Legon. Dr. Edu Osusa-Kodia, thank you so much for joining us on Hot Edition. So I hear the Finance Minister talk about the economy is turning the corner, as in it's improving, yet we're seeing a revised growth projection downwards. I mean, how do you make sense of this disconnect? That if the economy is growing, then why then do you review the growth rate downwards, for that matter?
Interesting. Good evening, and thanks for having me. I think the issue about GDP growth rate has a lot to do with, in my view, the contraction or the slow growth, I won't say contraction, the slow growth of government expenditure. Because you know the GDP is always measured from the expenditure side. That's what the Ghana Fiscal Service reports, even though they report the income and the production side. What we usually report in the budget is the expenditure side of the GDP reporting. And so there is a reduction in the growth rate of GDP, which is true. But if he says that that is the only indicator of showing that the economy is rebounding, then that statement could be false. Perhaps he's also looking at other indicators, which he made reference to as the macroeconomic stability. So he didn't only end with a GDP figure, but he continued to talk about inflation rate, the exchange rate depreciation, interest rate, etc., etc. So, for example, the end of year inflation rate was around 54%. Today is around 42%. Even though the 42% we all know is still high, but of course it's lower than 54. So, in his view, there's a downward trend of inflation, which is a good sign for any economy like ours. Exchange rate depreciation last year it depreciated almost more than 40%. Today it's depreciation around 21%. So on that score, it's far better than the end of 2022 figure. The family balance is now being projected to go to negative 0.5% of GDP away from 4.3%. So it's a positive sign. On cash basis, it's expected to have a surplus of 0.7% away from negative 3.2%, which is also, a good sign. And then others. So he wasn't making reference to, only GDP growth, but other indicators as we may see. Even the budget deficit is expected to reach 1.1% of GDP, which if you are able to achieve it, will be remarkable, because the large and front-loaded fiscal consolidation must happen this year. That's why we expect a very low budget deficit this year. Out of the 5.1 percentage point reduction in the budget deficit, but we ended the year with 11.8%. So if you are talking about 5.1 percentage point reduction, you are talking about some, 6% budget deficit. And so that 5.5 percentage point reduction is the medium-term target between 2023 and 2026. But out of the 5.1, 3.8 is expected to be achieved. Hello, can you hear me?
Can hear you clearly.
Yeah, 3.8 is expected to be achieved this year. So the front-loaded fiscal adjustment, much of which must happen this year, is the key driver or the key cause of the slow growth of the GDP as recorded. Also, you must remember that a number of taxes have been introduced, and we all know that in the calculation of GDP, the tax multiplier effect on GDP is negative, but the government expenditure multiplier on GDP is positive. So why then do we tax? We tax so that the expected positive government expenditure multiplier will be greater than the negative tax expenditure multiplier on GDP. So once you introduce new taxes or you increase the tax rate, you expect your GDP growth to slow down. And it is needed at this point to ensure stability. And then later on, GDP is projected to grow in 2024, 2025, and 2026 as prescribed in the IMF program. So on that score, I think that I agree that we need the stability. Stability is the most important thing, even if we have to sacrifice some percentage of GDP. And I think that that's what the budget is saying, that we pursue stability, even if it will cost some reduction in GDP growth rate. Now, let's understand that the growth rate, 1.5, is still positive. So it is not a contraction of GDP. If you say it's a contraction of GDP growth rate, I agree. So the 1.5 is still positive, except that it is lower than the projected 2.8%.
The emphasis for me, as you indicate, has been on the contraction of the growth rate, and I think that I've been quite consistent on that, and it ties into the concerns of many other people who are looking into the details of that the finance minister presented. Obviously, if we get anything beyond the 1.5, it's good for the economy, because we're talking about the total amount of goods and services which are going to be produced in the country within this specific period we're looking at. But if you also consider the minorities' concerns, and they are not alone in this, that the description by the finance minister that the economy is progressing and not also taking into consideration other factors could be misleading, because one, the issues about, for instance, the amount of money that I'm talking about government is borrowing from the T-bills market at a very, very high rate. If you check the media budget review, the finance minister talked about some 5.5 billion cedis that has been borrowed from the treasury bills market between January and June. And the concern has been at the rate at which the central, in fact, government is borrowing from the treasury bills market. Aside from that, there's actually a projection to borrow another 41 billion cedis going forward. That certainly should be of concern to you, is it not?
Yeah, it's a concern to all of us. I'm not sure the minister wanted to say that everything is okay in this economy. I think that if I listened to him carefully, he was making reference to some of the figures as at the end of 2022 and now. The fact that going for the IMF program has brought some relief or some progress in the macros. I think that basically was the point. But I'm not sure he resulted in saying that everything is okay at this moment, because everything is not okay. As you and I know, the government cannot continue to borrow at that high interest rate, because if that happens, then it's going to increase the debt service cost to government. So it's not a good sign at all. The TB rate, must be reduced to, let's say, around 10% or even a single digit. For me, the target for us as a country should be single-digit inflation and single-digit interest rate. Any other thing apart from this, I'm not sure we have arrived. So we must continue to pursue single-digit inflation and single-digit interest rate. If we're able to reach these limits, then we can think of some, major achievements, as one may call it. So, yeah, the government, but remember that the government hasn't been able to go to the Eurobond market, and even domestically, because of the debt restructuring, they are not likely to, borrow a lot from the domestic fund. So the only available option to them is a T-bill, and that, explains why the TB rate has increased that much, because if government turns its attention to the T-bill market, that's the only place that he can get some funds to pay salaries and to do one or two things. Then you expect the interest rate to go. But I'm sure that there are positive signs that after this stability, if we're able to enjoy this stability as a country, then moving forward, things would, we can recover. By the end of 2026, which is the end of the IMF program, I'm sure things will be far better, because we do not expect to reap the full benefit of the IMF program this year. Let us not make any that mistake. We do not expect, as a country, we should not expect to reap the full benefit of the IMF program. Why? Because the IMF program is for 3 years, and then the funds are to be released to us in tranches. So you cannot have, recently we just got 600 million, under 600 million will come, that's just 1.2. 1.2 million or 600 million cannot help you recover fully or reap the full benefit. So I do not expect everything to calm down as we all want this year. It's not likely to happen this year. It may take some time, maybe the next 3 years, as long as the program, exists. So yeah, I agree with you. It's a concern. It's a worrying concern that the government is borrowing at a higher rate. But the TB rate right now remains the only option to government, especially when we have also agreed with the IMF that the central bank should do zero financing. And personally, I disagree to that. I disagree to the point that the central bank should not finance government, expenditure. It is actually about the quantum, and I propose anything below 5%. As for 0%, it is not good for our economy. Remember that in 2015 they made a similar proposal that the central government should not borrow from the central bank, and actually the government at that time did zero borrowing. In fact, some of the civil society organizations put pressure on Parliament to propose between 0 and 5%, which was accepted by the IMF. But still, the government at that time did not do anything beyond 0%. And so, for me, that 0% financing now is not good for us. They should make some allowance, because the situation now is different from the one in 2015. Because the one in 2015, the government was able to go to the capital market to borrow. Now they have no access to the capital market. Even the domestic market, they have limited access. And so asking the government to do zero financing, I strongly disagree. And I think that we should, or start a debate. I mean, that's my view, personal view. Maybe someone else may have a different view, and then we can start a debate and make proposals to the IMF and the government to revise that particular clause. But let me also mention that the social protection has been very key in the IMF program, and it's surprising because in the past IMF never, they didn't want anything to say about social protection. You wouldn't see that as a key feature in their programs. But from the 90s coming, I think they have also learned a lot. They have reformed the way they do their things, and they are really, hitting on social protection. I think it's something good and something we must commend the IMF program and the government for really trying to put certain things in place to cushion the poor and the vulnerable in society.
We'll see how things play out. But thank you so much for your thoughts. Appreciate it as always. Dr. Edu Susakode is an economist sharing his thoughts with us. And I'm going to stay a bit further on this because we have reactions from you, members of the general public as well. This is the minority in Parliament speaking after the budget presentation, and also we'll be connecting with Dr. Patrick Esuming shortly on this matter as well.
To say that he has successfully turned the corner, that can never be the case. In fact, according to Adongo, he's not even close to the corner. What he has successfully done, indeed, is that he has deepened the woes of the ordinary Ghanaian. I say this for a simple reason, because of certain factors that the statement has outlined. First, he has revised economic growth from 2.8% of GDP to 1.5% of GDP. This clearly shows that the economy is contracting and it is declining, and obviously is going to affect jobs and the welfare of the ordinary Ghanaian. Remember that in the year 2022, the overall GDP growth was 2.2%. He announced it was 3.1%. He announced in the 2023 budget in November, when he appeared before us, that the economy is expected to grow at 2.8%. I had indicated to him that with all what is happening in the economy, there is no way Ghana's economy can grow at 2.8%. Today, and finally, the chicken has come home to be roasted. He has informed us that the economy is going down, and to the extent that GDP growth is going to be 1.5% by the end of the year 2023. Even this, I have my doubts. Because looking at all what is happening, if care is not taken, we will struggle to see economic growth at above 1%.
We all listen to the funeral dirge. At some point, I had to wake up and ask them to wake up from sleep and listen to the man. So when they finally got up and said, yeah, they were sleeping. So I was surprised when they suddenly woke up, they were shouting when they hadn't heard the man speaking. What this means is that the Bank of Ghana itself, as we speak, is not fit for purpose. Because Bank of Ghana, as we speak today, cannot undertake monetary policy without printing money, because it doesn't have money. And yet you say you have turned the corner.
Well, so that's Isaac Adongo there, is the ranking on the Finance Committee of Parliament. You earlier had Dr. Kesela Toforsen, who is the minority leader as well, talking there. Let's go to Dr. Patrick Esuming. I thank you so much, Doc, for your time here on Hot Edition. Do you share in the concern that not just the minority have raised, but some other persons as well, about the details of this media budget review, especially with respect to the contraction in the GDP growth rate and how that also could impact on the larger economic outlook that we are seeing?
Good evening, and good evening to listeners. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I think it's definitely a concern. You know, 2022 was a difficult year for Ghana. So to understand and to see that we are even projecting slower growth for 2023 must be very gut-wrenching news for ordinary Ghanaians. But in a sense, it wasn't that surprising. I think if you look at what we are going to do with the IMF program, what the domestic debt exchange has done to the fortunes of banks and the individual Ghanaians. And also the other measures that are coming, you know that 2023 is going to end a very difficult year. So, yes, it's quite concerning, but it's important that these updates are made so that Ghanaians will know that, getting into an IMF program is not the end of our problem. So I think the updates were necessary. I was also troubled to see that we are going to end the year with an import cover of only 0.8 months, less than 1 month, which is also troubling. So I think overall, the mid-year budget review is really it's a reality check, and it's important for Ghanaians to understand that things are going to get worse before they get better.
I mean, how worse can they get? We've got into, and when you say this, I put myself in the shoes of the listeners, because we all live the everyday life of the current state of the economy and how biting it is on all of us. So how worse would it get before it gets better than where we even find ourselves now?
Yeah, I mean, it's important that we don't underestimate the depth of the economic crisis we are in, the level of difficulty we are facing. The government finances are not in a good place, and the government has made the choices they want to make by deciding that you lean towards more revenue measures rather than an equal weight of revenue and expenditure. So what that means is that we haven't seen the end in terms of electricity tariff adjustment, and we haven't seen an end in restrictions into public sector employment, and also the private sector is in a challenging place. I think if you look at the overall cost of doing business, interest cost, and you also consider the new taxes that have just been, the 3 taxes that were introduced in May, and all the compounding effects it will have. I think, for me, it's better that we are not under any illusion about where we are before we get surprised. So I think it was good that this information was absolutely made clear.
If, for instance, the reference, another very, very important issue that came up was the import cover of less than a month. I mean, if we're looking at it in real terms, what danger are we confronted with, considering this information that the finance minister put out today, especially with respect to the import cover?
I think that, we probably would have been in West State if we had not stopped, if we had not suspended debt payments, right, the foreign debt payments. So, it just tells you, the level of our exposure to international financing. And we should discount any idea that certain investors have confidence in the Ghanaian economy. I think the finance minister did mention that. I'm not so sure that that's really the case. I think if you look, the outflows out of the economy is continuing. So when you put all of this together, it's not. But I think, between where we are and the fact that we are going to receive by the end of the year 1.2 billion from the IMF and some additional funding from the World Bank, I think it's still a little surprising to see that this is the projection. So maybe there's some more explanation that is needed, especially for that. Because we are not going to do annual Eurobond, but we didn't do that last year. And we ended up a little better. And last year, don't forget, we were still paying interest. So when you put all of this together, I think that one surprised me a little bit.
Even at this level, it's surprising to you?
Yes, I think that the import cover number surprised me because, like I said, we are going to receive, between the first 2 tranches, we are supposed to receive about $1.2 billion from the IMF, and then the World Bank is supposed to give us some additional funding. So when you put all of that together, and don't forget that this year, up to this point, we have exported more than we have imported. So I think there's something there doesn't seem to. I think the information given doesn't make it clear. So I think some more clarification will be needed there.
See. Dr. Patrick Zubin, thank you so much for joining us here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Appreciate your time. And he's an economist as well as a lecturer joining us with his thoughts. Some members of the general public have been sharing their thoughts on this. And we're going to be hearing from them shortly about the mid-year budget review and matters arising. But take a listen to the finance minister talking about negotiations with external creditors.
Mr. Speaker, government has also begun the process of negotiating with its commercial creditors, our Eurobond investors. 2 bondholder groups have been formed comprising domestic and regional bondholders as well as international bondholders. Government has already shared a set of data and scenarios to commence discussions. On the restructuring of Eurobonds, we expect to receive counter offers from the bondholders in the short term and envisage an agreement by year end. Mr. Speaker, the financial sector comprising commercial banks, special deposit-taking institutions, insurance sector, and fund managers participated significantly in the DDEP. The effects of the debt operation in the financial sector is elevated liquidity and solvency risks from impairment losses. Regulators, including the Bank of Ghana, provide a temporary regulatory forbearance to mitigate the liquidity impact of the DDEP.
So that's the finance minister there, Kenneth Oriata. And a number of you have been sharing your thoughts with us on this media budget review. We hit the streets. Take a listen.
I believe before the start of the year, even as an individual, as an entity, you make your own projection about your income, your expenditure, what you intend to, a target that you intend to achieve. So as a government that is as a whole does that, so maybe due to 1 or 2 circumstances or unforeseen issues, government feels that the target set by government itself is not attainable and then decides to cut it off. I think it's not something out of the blue, but then the question should be, what happened? Why is it so? Why is it that the target that we set for ourselves as a nation, we are now reviewing it and then bringing it down?
So the little I can say is that I was hoping that the tax on sanitary pad could have been abolished or should be abolished, which they didn't take into consideration after the protests and everything, because sanitary pad now has become very expensive and people find it very difficult to, purchase. And even those buying now, it's becoming a problem because you see some people have to buy like 2 or 3 and it's becoming very, very expensive. So I was hoping that could have been done just to ease a little bit of pressure from we females or women. But since it wasn't done, I'm sure there should be another protest. I think that's the language the government understands. And with that, I think I'll be actively involved with that because I think it's something that they should do.
Basically, I was looking at having them reduce taxes of the pads. And I'm saying the pads because I'm a female and I've seen the stress that I had to go through having to purchase menstrual towels that are worth too much than they were in the past 2 years. And then looking at that as well, looking at the fact that actually there are no taxes in the budget, maybe it's good news to some of us, but the fact that taxes have not been cut of our menstrual pads, something that we have been advocating for in the past months now, and there has been no reduction on that. I think government has not done so much for us. Government has not done well on that for us. That's what I think.
Okay. Aside that, there's been discourse about the public office holders, being it politicians or civil servants, declaring their assets publicly. As it stands now, they don't do it publicly, but they do it.
How do we call it? Momo charges thing that it was introduced, which Tobut was abolished. So I was thinking that those monies, after they did their calculation, was thinking that it could also cushion the government and make the tax also sustainable. But with all this and it's still not attainable, then I don't know. Something is wrong somewhere.
Well, it is the something that's wrong somewhere that the likes of, especially the private sector, were hoping that some taxes will be removed or reduced for that matter. And for instance, the COVID levy was one of the major expectations of many people, not just the private sector, but all consumers, that the COVID-19 levy should be removed to actually reduce the burden of taxes on the consuming public. But guess what? That did not happen. The private sector was also expecting that some taxes as well could be reduced. We didn't hear anything of the sort. Dr. Joseph Obeng is president of the Ghana Union of Trade Association, GUTA. He's joining me on the telephone. Dr. Obeng, thank you so much for joining us on Hot Edition. Your expectations were dashed, was it not? Because you were one of those who were expecting that at least the COVID levy should have been removed.
We had a hint when we met with the finance minister that we are going to factor our input in the November budget reading. And so we are not expecting any changes. And true to our prediction, there's no change. The status quo remains the same. Cost of doing business is still going to be high until we accept some.
Dr. Obeng, I'm losing you, so if you could reposition so I get clarity with your connection. Hello? Unfortunately, we lost Dr. Joseph Obeng. Let's try reconnecting with him again. Clearly not too happy about the expectations not being met. As the Ghana Union Traders Association, GUTA, they were expecting, amongst other things, that at least the COVID-19 levy be removed, and then also they made recommendations that certain tax measures should also be reduced, and especially the taxes on the imports and the port charges that have gone astronomically high. They were expecting that should also be addressed. That did not happen. In fact, the finance minister did acknowledge that container charges had gone up by about almost sevenfold, cost of shipping containers into the country. Dr. Obeng, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. You are making a point.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that nothing has changed, even though there were no new taxes. We were even not expecting any certain. So the status quo remains that the cost of doing business is still going to be high until we get some revision in the November budget reading, as we have been promised that some of our inputs will be taken. But for now, we still are in the same place. Yeah.
I see, but you were expecting, for instance, among other things, that the COVID levy at least should have been removed. I've heard the likes of Professor Justice Nongong, who's an associate professor at the School of Public Health, University of Ghana, making the point that the COVID levy could generate between 100 and 200 million cedis for government, and so it should not succumb to your pressure of removing the COVID levy. What's your take on that?
Well, no, it's not only even the COVID levy, also the special import levy. These were one of the levies or taxes that were imposed on us for a temporary use. The special import levy by the previous administration, that after the sunset, they will remove. So now it has been entrenched and perpetuated as a mainstream tax. And then the COVID levy too came to for us manage the COVID pandemic. Now the pandemic is not there. And so we cannot assume that it is entrenched in the taxes that we pay. It is not fair. Yeah. And so that one will pursue our engagement with government to make sure that, because if you say that we need taxes to be thrown down, what are the taxes that we are talking about? These are some of them that that one legitimately they can remove from the list so that we can have some respite to do our business.
I see. But then you talk about engagement with government. Every time you've had these engagements, but they go into the budget, and your proposals or recommendations are not captured in the document itself. that certainly should concern you, does it not?
Yeah, it's a matter of a concern to the business community, and even for the last 2 years, we are not getting the opportunity even to engage with government and even further our input, and that's why during the imposition of the 3 taxes and all that, we were very much worried, and we were seeking for this stakeholder engagement. Now that we've gotten the opportunity with them, we are going to make sure that most of our input are factored in the incoming budget. Otherwise, we wouldn't know what to do, because the finance minister is talking about growth. How are we going to achieve this growth when we are being impeded with this number of taxes? It's not going to happen. The interest rate that we are being made to pay, the inflation that we are experiencing, and all that, all impede the growth of businesses. So businesses have to, we have to lessen the burden of businesses so that we can have the space to grow. Now, as it were, businesses are collapsing, and it is not in the interest of the country itself.
Dr. Zobeng, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
He's the president of the Ghana Union Trade Association, GUTA. You're on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. The leadership of the Colleges of Education Teachers Association of Ghana, that's CTAG, has served notice to withdraw services across the 46 public colleges of education effective tomorrow, August 1, 2023. According to the association, the government has failed to implement the negotiated allowances as ordered by the National Labour Commission. President of CTAG, Prince Obinghima, addressed the media today in Kumasi.
That effective Tuesday, 1st August 2023, all tutors with emphasis, all tutors of the 46 public colleges of education in Ghana are to withdraw teaching and related services until our employer has complied with all the orders of the NLC. All the orders underlined. Yay. Yay. Ladies and gentlemen, the demands of CTAG are as follows. 1, full payment of 7 months arrears of allowances accruing from the approved conditions of service owed members per the NLC's arbitral award order. 2, payment of 1 month's salary to each member of CTAG as compensation for additional duty performed in the year 2022 as ordered by the NLC. 3, publication of the report of the staff audit and subsequent extension of public universities' rate of allowances to deserving members of CTAG per the NLC's arbitral award order. 4, immediate release of leave roster by each college of education to enable each tutor take 15 working days leave for the year 2022 as ordered by the NLC. And then 5, unconditional cancellation of the killer all year-round academic calendar, effective 2023-2024 academic year.
Hey, no retreat, no surrender. No retreat, no surrender.
We want to serve notice to the government that enough is enough. Yes. We have gone through this suffering for far too long, and we believe that the college teacher deserves better.
So that's where you have it. This College of Education Teacher Association of Ghana declaring the intention of the strike beginning tomorrow. We'll keep an eye on that as well and be updating you, our listeners here on 3FM 92.7. And Anika Mensah Brampa is here with the latest in business. It's all about immediate budget review.
Exactly, Alfred. It wasn't too much of a long day because it was a short statement from the finance minister. And if you ask me, with regards to the content, I can tell you that there's a lot of honesty because the finance minister has described the first half of the 2023 year as a difficult year for the country, but a lot of fallouts from there. And he admits that the country's economic crisis also emanates from fundamental and systemic weaknesses that must boldly be confronted. So we'll be hearing boldly.
Okay.
He was really emphatic on that. So key amongst the weaknesses Ken Ofori-Atta identified include Ghana's low GDP ratio, the high demand and dependence on imports, including food products that can be produced here in Ghana, inefficient power management, numerous statutory funds with expenditure issues, to mention a few. The finance minister says government is ready to put in strong effort to address these issues.
On our part, we will ensure that we implement systems to enhance revenue collection through compliance measures to bring public finances back to a sustainable path while growing the real sector of the economy, especially agriculture. Implement the necessary structural reforms to strengthen expenditure commitment control, avoid arrears accumulation, and protect the public purse. Strengthen SOE governance, review statutory funds, and ensure improved alignment of key priorities, address the energy sector challenges, and implement the accelerated community roads improvement phase 2 to expand motorability and improve roads nationwide.
And on the energy sector challenges, with threats from the Chamber of Independent Power Producers to cut power supply in coming days, the finance minister insists that government is engaging the IPPs on debt relief and financing arrangements with regards to the $2.3 billion debt.
Economy, government has sustained collaborative engagement of IPPs. Currently, IPPs are being engaged to restructure their accrued outstanding balances and eliminate payment shortfalls and arrears accrual in the sector. The gas sales agreement between VRA and NGAS has been renegotiated to reduce the take-or-pay commitment and other financial obligations to the state.
Also, under the government initiative, phase 2 of the Planting for Food and Jobs is being finalized, according to the finance minister, to ensure a more efficient and targeted support for the agricultural sector.
The program has directly contributed to increased crop yields for major food staples such as maize, rice, and soya by 135%, 67%, and 18% respectively within the period. After a comprehensive review, government is finalizing PFJ phase 2 to ensure a more efficient and targeted support for the agricultural sector. The key elements of phase 2 are inputs credit systems, storage and distribution infrastructure, commodity trading, and digitized platforms.
Government also outlined some measures to support the private sector in the 2023 mid-year budget review.
Government has established and recapitalized critical institutions that are able to provide financial intermediation to the private sector. These institutions include GERSEL, Development Bank of Ghana, Consolidated Bank of Ghana, the Ghana Commodity Exchange, the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, and the Venture Capital Trust Fund. Mr. Speaker, as the economy recovers, we need to support these critical institutions to deepen their interaction with private sector to spur growth and create more jobs. Government will place emphasis on supporting DBG capital raising to US $1 billion mark in the medium term and disbursing about $1 billion Ghana cedis in loans from the current $450 million by end of the year.
And as part of efforts to promote made in Ghana products, government says it has established an exports trade house in Kenya to promote the made in Ghana products. And this is also to ensure support is critical to these institutions to deepen their interaction with the private sector and spur growth within the economy as it embarks on a recovery trajectory.
Established an export trade house in Nairobi, Kenya, to promote made in Ghana products and services. We have also undertaken a marketing expansion addition to Kenya of 63 Ghanaian companies to introduce them to the East African market. Government has also facilitated the issuance of AFCFTA certificates of origin to 51 Ghanaian companies and businesses covering 300 product lines, indicating eligibility to be traded under its AFCFTA.
Well, so as expected from the business community as well as a lot of economic analysts, the budget was silent on taxes. It means that there was no taxes introduced, as in no new taxes introduced. And again, it was silent on the sanitary pad tax, and I'm sure that that will generate more conversation in our subsequent bulletins. We'll be setting the agenda subsequently and getting you more reactions to the mid-year budget review. But when you log on to 3news.com, you get more business news updates there. Ori Kwampofo is standing by with the latest in sports. All right, didn't hear anything with regards to sports in the mid. Were you expecting anything at all?
We usually get, I think last time we got about 10 seconds.
That was the actual budget last year, November.
Yeah, so I think we got about 10-15 seconds. So we're usually not like too expectant.
You're not even looking for 2 seconds. well, beyond the budget, what should we expect in sports today?
Also, the Women's World Cup is still ongoing, and Nigeria are doing Africa proud, and so we'll be getting some reaction from that.
Okay, all right.
And so we'll be looking at the Women's World Cup because Nigeria became the first African side to reach the knockout round of the ongoing Women's World Cup after a goalless draw with Ireland early on Monday. The Super Falcons only needed to avoid defeat, and captain of the side, Onomi Ebi, admits they had the game plan heading into the game.
The NFF got $960,000 from FIFA as money for teams that qualified for the FIFA World Cup. But as we speak,
victory, an important one for Nigeria, for Africa, making us proud. How do you feel? How is it feeling like?
I feel excited. I know this game is going to be tough. We have our game plans. It's either we win or we draw, but it's nothing like losing in today's game, and we achieved that. I'm grateful to God. Like, God did it for us, and we did it ourselves. You know, we prepared for it, and now we got it.
All right, keep going.
Thank you.
Also, that was captain of the Super Falcons, Onomi Ebi, and she's speaking after they drew 0-0 with Ireland, and they will be in the round of 16 of the Women's World Cup, awaiting their opponents, which would likely be either England or China. Let's still stay with women's football because there have been some disagreements concerning the bonuses of the Nigerian women's team that they're supposed to receive from their football federation. Nigerian journalist Omar Akatuba reviews the federation backed out of some of the promises made to the team.
$160,000 from FIFA as money for teams that qualified for the FIFA World Cup. But as we speak, they refuse to pay the girls because the girls had an agreement with the NFF and said, give us 30% of the FIFA money and you take 70%. But when FIFA made an announcement that each player of every team will get $30,000 if they reach the next round and up to $270,000 if they win the round, the NFF suddenly backed out of the agreement. And they said, oh, FIFA is going to pay you. But that's a different agreement compared to what we had because you are getting money from FIFA.
Also, that was Omar Akatuba there talking about some of the bonus issues that the Super Falcons of Nigeria have been having during the Women's World Cup. But before we go, let's do some international news. Manchester United defender Luke Shaw has explained how different the team will look to play under new goalkeeper Andre Onana. The Cameroonian was signed from Inter Milan as a replacement for David De Gea, whose contract ran out to the Red Devils.
Yeah, of course, I think they're very different keepers. I think first and foremost, David for us last season was, and for the seasons he's been here, he was amazing. You know, I think a massive legend to this club. You know, won the Golden Glove last season, so you know we're obviously sad to see him go, but you know we wish him the best and hope you know it goes well from here on there. But I think with the new addition we have, I think he'll bring different qualities to what David had, and I think especially you'll see maybe a different side now with building up from the back, and you know that he brings a bit more composure to that, and I think he suits the exact way, like I said, that the manager wants. So yeah, I've been really impressed so far.
And so that's how we wrap up the sports segment here on Hot Edition on 2FM 92.7. My name is Ori Kwampo, and up next is Entertainment with Akofa.
Thank you very much, Oriku, for bringing us up to speed on all that's happening in the world of sports. You're still tuned in to 3FM 92.7. And coming up on the entertainment news segments, the 16th edition of TV3's reality show Ghana's Most Beautiful has been launched. Now, the grand launch signals the start of yet another thrilling, familiarizing journey with Ghana's rich cultural heritage. Now, here's a report by 3 Entertainment.
Tonight is the night we've all been waiting for. Is the grand launch and unveiling of GMB 2023 as 16 beautiful ladies are ready to be unveiled to the whole world. It's going to be a beautiful night of pomp, pageantry and culture.
It's been 16 consistent years of entertaining and educating Ghanaians on the most prestigious reality show, Ghana's Most Beautiful, which has enlightened Ghanaians on some cherished cultural and traditional values. In its 15-year history, the platform has groomed and empowered numerous Ghanaian women. The journey is on for the 16th season of this insightful reality show.
And there comes the pride of the Ashanti region. Agatha Osei is from Asinia in the Ashanti region. But she says on this platform, you can call her Ebu. From the Savannah region, we present to you Titiaka Walhana Tubolo.
True Ghanaian woman, you are wise and strong. Rise up and tell your story.
So you've seen our 16 beautiful ladies. Time now to meet our beautiful judges who will be with them all throughout the season and find out how the season is going to be from their lenses.
It's been a night of splendor, spectacular events. All the girls are looking so beautiful. All I keep telling them is all of them, they have the capacity to be the winner. The only thing that stops them is themselves. Whether they believe in themselves that they can do it. But once they've gotten here, it means the initial steps have already been taken. There are young girls looking at you, inspired by you, motivated by you. Stand up for yourself, be memorable, be exciting, and believe you me, we the judges here, we are only here to guide you, and we will guide you as far as you want to go.
In her speech, the group CEO of Media General, Madam Beatrice Ajiman, said the GMB platform will continue to empower young Ghanaian women to be agents of change in society.
As GMB continues to serve as a powerful platform for young Ghanaian women to flourish, express themselves, and embrace their cultural identity, we invite you to stand with Media General and TV3 in welcoming this new season of Ghana's Most Beautiful. Together, let's challenge societal stereotypes, empower our incredible contestants to break barriers, and inspire viewers from all corners of our nation.
GMB 2023 will excite viewers with a blend of culture, fun, and intellect as the delegates look all geared up to make their regions proud.
True Ghanaian woman, you are wise and strong. Rise up and tell your story, your story.
Still talking GMB, reigning GMB queen Taya Bon Taya Aisha Dahamani has charged the newly unveiled GMB contestants to be authentic and strive to make their regions proud. She gave the advice at the launch and unveiling of this year's GMB at the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park and Mausoleum.
First of all, I'd say congratulations to all 16 delegates. They've come a long way. They've come this far, not only by your support, but by their hard work. As you know, Ghana's Most Beautiful is the ultimate pageant in the country, the most honorable and the most coveted. So we're all hoping to have fun during this competition, but we are looking out for the queen. So just give us your best. As someone who's been in their shoes and getting to wear the crown, my message to all of them would be that yes, it is a competition, but just be you, be authentic, pray a lot to God, be respectful and humble. A queen needs to embody so much, and that's what we are looking out for. So humility is something that will take you to the crown as well.
And that will be all the entertainment news here on Hot Edition, powered by 3 Entertainment. My name is Sakofa. Thank you for your time. And on behalf of Alfred and the entire production team, I'd like to say thank you for joining us. And for more news, log on to 3news.com. The 3FM Drive team will take over your radio now.